Hi, today I want to show you how you can add native background location tracking inside of your Wized mobile application using the Despia background location SDK. It's super simple to set up, so let's do this together. Now, as you can see, I already have a Wized project set up and a Webflow project alongside that, and I also have my application registered with Despia, which is perfect, and I already have it published, and it is on my testflight/Android beta tester account. Now, there's a few things that we need to do inside of the Despia editor. Of course, you want to make sure that it is available for you to test on your real device and that you have a developer account. Now, if you do have that, you also want to make sure that you go to the add-ons and you go a little bit down here and you make sure that background location tracking is enabled. And if you have that enabled, one thing that you want to make sure is that you build your application again if you have not had this feature enabled, and it would be already on TestFlight or Android beta tester, so that it adds the appropriate dependencies, SDKs, and permissions and entitlements inside of your application so that you can test this accordingly. Now, if you have made sure of that, let's take a look at how we can set this up. Now, it's super simple, and we have great documentation that will be under this video to make it even easier for you to set it up. So let's take a look at that. Now, first of all, we want to add a button inside of our application that will allow us to go inside of here and, kind of like request that permission with, the interface that we can register those things inside of Wized. So this is just for demonstration purposes. You could do this on page load, or you could integrate this more deeper into the UI of your mobile application. But I just go here on plus, and I'm just going to add a button, right? And I'm going to make this button say, start background location, right? That will start watching the background location. I'll duplicate this button, and it should probably go down with a little bit of a gap here. There you go. And now I will make this button stop background location in Webflow, right? I'm doing this interface in Webflow. I have start background location, stop background location. Now I'll do another thing is I'm just going to add a form block here. And in this form block, I'm going to delete everything that's inside of here essentially. But I'm going to go into the form, and I'm going to put a text area in the form just so that I have this example field here that I can use to kind of like, show the content. So I'm going to make this height 25 rem. Now let's actually do 15 rem. That's just so that I can see it. And then we also need to go to the form here. And let's make the form flex, and we're going to do with 100%. Oh, we need to put this in the form block. I apologize for that. So let's actually make the form block flex, and let's make the width inside of here 100%. There you go. And we'll do max width 25 rem. There you go. So now we have the ability to show the location inside of here. And I'm going to give this form block a height of 25 rem. That's a little bit too much. Let's actually do 15 rem. Okay. And now this will show us that very nicely. There you go. So we now have this inside of here. We have start, stop. We have a little bit of a text area where we can see the background location, how it changes as we move the phone. This is great for, a test environment. So now there are a few things that we want to do. Now we have those elements, of course, designed in Webflow. We now need to add interactivity to it. So we need to register those elements with Wized. So for that, for start background location, I will go on the settings panel inside of Webflow, and I will add a custom attribute. This will be a Wized attribute written W-I-Z-E-D, and the value will be start background location, start background location, and then the stop background location button will also, again, we go to settings, we will add a custom attribute. That will be a Wized attribute, W-I-Z-E-D, and I will add stop background location. There you go, stop background location. And then I go to the text area here, which will be not be a form submission, right? And this will just be an example text area. So I will just, I will remove the connected apps on that. This is just, you would put this in the variable. You would maybe render a map for the location, or maybe send it to the backend and all that kind of stuff, right? So I'm just going to remove the app. If I can't remove the app, I'm just going to call it a day, because this is just for illustration purposes to show this to you in this video, because you can't look what's happening on my server and all that, right? So we're just going to keep it as is. We may be able to go into the form block and remove the application from there, but no, they won't let us do that. So I think this is fine, because we're not submitting the form. We're just putting this as a text area so you can see as I move the phone later on in the demo how the location changes. Now we want to go and add a custom attribute inside of here on this text area of Wized, and this will be sample location data field. Sample location data field. There you go. So now we have those elements built inside of Webflow. We have added the appropriate attributes on them so that we can now publish this in Webflow. And when we go now into the Wized editor, they will appear with the custom Wized attributes, allowing us to add interactivity on those elements. So if I just reload the Wized canvas, you will see now that we have the elements. And if I go to the X-ray mode inside of Wized, you will see that those elements are now available to us for use. So here's what we want to do. Before we start, we want to go to the data section, to the data store panel inside of Wized. We will expand the general data store, and we will create a new variable called location. Location. This will house the location, and we will also set an initial value inside of it. Now, I will go to our documentation for that, and we have an initial value inside of here that we can just copy and paste inside of here. That is the initial value. So we already create this global variable, making it very easy to work with. And you see, we already have this global variable appear here in the data panel. So this is kind of like how we set that up. Perfect. Now we want to start watching the background location. So I will go to my button, and again, you could run this on page load. You could run this whenever you want to do it, but this is just for illustrational purposes to understand the principle. So I'm just going to go on this button here, start background location, and I will now go on the action of that, and I will add a new event. And that event will be on click. So we will register an on-click event listener on the start background location element. And I will now add an action. And that action will be a run function. And I will now expand the function editor here so I can write the run function. Now, for that, we go back to the Despia documentation for Wized, and we will run window.despia equals background location on : // This is our Despia deep link scheme to enable the native background location capabilities. So we go back to Wized, and we will paste this line simply inside of here. It's super simple. Look at that. Now, don't worry about Despia being undefined in the editor. It's undefined in your web application because this will not affect any functionality of your web application, which is beautiful, exactly what we want. But when it will run in the Despia native runtime, it will of course define the Despia object inside of there, giving you this bridge to access native functionalities. So we can close this here. And now that's the first thing. This is how we initialize the native background capability inside of the application. Now, after we have initialized that, we need to run another run function. So I will go to run function, and I will expand the function editor here. I will go back to our documentation and copy this code here that will listen for location changes. And you can adjust this, and you can add some debouncing to it. I'm not going to do that, but expect this code inside of here. If I paste this code inside of here, right, expect this code to run all the time, because the moment the phone is making the slightest move and not sitting still on a table, you will get an event, and this will update the variable. And if you register an API call on updating the variable, you may actually blow up your whole server that's receiving that, and you'll be paying lots of money if you use something like make. So my suggestion, has nothing to do with Despia. It has something to do with how you want to set this up. My suggestion would be two things. You either want to add some debouncing to this. So you go to the API call that you're calling and you add some debouncing, meaning you can't call this API more than one time within a 10-second time frame. You could set up something like this. Or if you don't want that and you want it to be real-time, you would not use an API. You would use a real-time WebSocket to do this connection, because that is not going through the network of doing an API call, and that is usually a better way, and the way how most of those applications communicate real-time data if you're building a delivery app or something like this. So just note that for your reference, that you may want to consider when you set this up to follow best practices when it comes to web development. But now inside of this code, we set the options. We have enable high accuracy. This will use GPS. We will have a timeout. This will be how long we will wait for a reading. And then we have maximum age. This kind of like, lets us cache some of the things and work with the parameters of how long things should be cached on a specific position. And inside of here, you see that this code is already updating the v.location variable, which we have generated inside of Wized. So our documentation code will already give you this inside of here. And then we have this on error event, and we have this all set up inside of here. Now, there you go. This all looks fine. Let's see. I may actually made a typo in this code in the documentation. So I think, let's see, we have the watch position function, but it seems like the function never closes, right? So, no. Does it close? Okay, now I'm a little, no, it doesn't close the function. We have watch.navigator, we have the object inside of here. We're looking for the position. This is, no, actually, this is opening it here. So this is being closed inside of here, right? And this is being closed inside of here. So interesting. Okay, I will actually pause this video because the Wized editor shows me that there are some syntax errors, and I made some syntax errors because it's not the final documentation yet. So just expect the code that you will be able to paste from the documentation to be accurate by the time this video is live, but I will double check on this right now and we'll be back in a second. So there actually has been an error in the documentation. I forgot to put a brace inside of there, or to be precise, I put it on the wrong space. I put it here instead of putting it here, which happens sometimes when you edit code. I built the documentation on the core documentation and adjusted it to work with Wized. So it wasn't the final one, it was just a temporary documentation. So, it's fixed now. So you would now copy the correct code from our documentation, and you would go to Wized and you would paste this inside of here, and you see their code editor will only, tell you that something is wrong with the latitude, do not exist in type location, but that's fine because that will run in the native Despia runtime, so you don't have to worry about that. So inside of here, we have those options like we had them before. Now all the syntax is correct. You don't have to worry about that. We're setting the v.location variable, which we have defined right inside of here. Perfect. We're putting all this data inside of it. And then we will have an optional way for you to perform a request or run any line of code that you want. If there is an error, I'll just keep this optional, and then those options here, they're coming from right inside of here, making it easier for you to define without having to go inside of the depth of the code itself. So there you go, that's the code you'll be using, and we will just close this just like that. So now this is how we start watching the location. How cool is that, right? We're watching that, and if we take a look, we have the variable. Oh, I think I added the variable. I don't want to add the variable. Don't click on the variable while you're in the code editor. Now we can close it, but when I take a look at the variable here, we have this now set to be empty, all null, and then we would just use this to override the variable, right? And then you could go and add an event listener on variable change, which is something that you can do in Wized, allowing you then to take this data and, call a WebSocket, call an API with some debouncing if you want, and get that data over to your server. And that's the code. We initialize Despia to start the background location tracking, and then we're going to use this code to watch for changes and to update that variable accordingly. Pretty simple, actually. And now the syntax is correct in our documentation. So this is how we watch it. Now, I just have this field inside of here, this text area, that will just be a sample input so that we can take a look at the data of the variable when we open this in the application. You don't need to do this in your live application, but we just want to do this so I can illustrate you and show you kind of like the data when we open this on our mobile device. So I will just go to the value here, and the value will be v.location. As you can see, I now have the location data inside of here, which is just what I want. So you can take a look and you can see this, right? Perfect. Now we need to set up the capability for us to stop watching the location if you want the user to stop watching the location, right? There you go. Now, what we're doing is we're going to go to an event or an action on the stop background location button, and we will add a new event that will be on click, and now we will add an action, and that action will be a run function, and now we will write the function. So I will go back to our documentation, which is now correct, and I will copy this Despia SDK to turn the native background location capability off. So I'll go back to Wized and I'll paste this inside of here in this function editor. Now, after this run function of running window.despia equals background location off : with the deep link, we will add another action and we will perform a run function, and I will go to the function editor again, and we will now copy this code inside of here to stop the location changes, to stop this event listening, to always listen for location changes and write that to the variable, which we've been doing above here, right? So we'll go back to Wized and we will paste this code inside of here. You see we're getting the watch ID, defining it as a const, and then we're getting this from v.location, which is our variable right here. And then we're just, stopping the watch process. There you go. Now you could, again, start this when the app opens, unload, on page finished loading, when an API is done. This is just an example implementation, but this covers everything that you need to really put this into every kind of use case, building a delivery app, whatever you want to do. And the nice thing is the location changes are being executed and sent to your WebSocket and sent to your API, even while the app is closed, making it very cool and very nice when you want to have that kind of functionality running in the background, because background processing will be enabled if you have this capability in the native Despia add-ons setup. So, remember on the start, you went to the Despia editor, you go to add-ons, you go to the hard-coded section, and you can turn on track background location. This will automatically add the ability for background processing in your application, meaning that all the code that you will run in Wized will be executed even while the app is closed or the phone is on standby, which is something that normally does not happen to an application unless it has that capability. So now we have the functionality implemented to start the background location tracking with 2 run functions, and we have the stop background location tracking implemented also with 2 run functions, and we have this little sample data text area here that will show us the sample data. So now I will publish this in Wized and we will open this on our mobile application. So let's close this. It was just published. And now I will open my iPhone here, and I have this application already installed through TestFlight. And let's take a look at that. Now you see it wants to access my background location, and I will allow, while using the application, I will allow push notifications. I will allow the app to track and share my data. And now, as you can see, if I click on Start Background Location Tracking, that I'm moving my phone right now, as you can see here, how it's changing, the data of the specific location, the depth, the height of the phone, so you can really build a cool application if you need to track the activity of delivery drivers, whatever you want to do, right? You know, you have this location change going on here. And now if I do stop location change, you will see it should work. Oh, maybe. My bad. We did a mistake when it comes to Wized. And the beautiful thing about Despia is I can just close the application and we can fix it, we can open it, and it should work. There you go. My mistake is that I blindly copied the code and it is the temporary documentation, and there is a mistake in the temporary documentation. We can't just do v.location. We need to do v.location.watch ID, because we need to get the specific watch ID parameter, right? If you do take a look at the v.location inside of here, you will see that we have the watch ID defined here. So right now we're just using the whole object to stop the location change, which we shouldn't do. So we are now clearing the watch ID. We're taking the watch ID and then stopping it based on the watch ID. So on this background location change inside of here, if you see, we need to do v.location.watchID, and I'll be updating the documentation. So you just have to copy the code and trust that it works. There you go. So this is just how you do that. And I apologize for that, but it's always good to, you know, take a look at all those things that are not working and not cut those out from the videos, because some person may just write v.location without the watch ID, and now you know, oh, it's quite important to use the watch ID parameter of that object. And also one optional thing that we can do to make it more clear is we can copy the sample object that we have in the variable, the start value, right? And when we go to stop the background location on that button, we can add another action of set variable, and we will set the location variable, and we will put this null value here with the initial state. So we will clear that data. Now, after making that change, and after this, I will immediately update the documentation, we can just open our iPhone again, open the application. We don't have to republish anything. We got updates over the air, just like that. And you start the background location. And now you will see, as I move my phone, the location is changing. If I stop the background location, it does not stop the background location, which it should, and it should also clear the variable. So I have an assumption that for some reason this event is not executing. Let's see why that is happening. I have a click event listener on stopping that. For some reason it doesn't stop it when I click this, right? And it should also clear the variable. So, oh, I need to publish it. You see? This is why we put this in the videos. So, you know, you learn from my mistakes. We got to make sure to publish it. Otherwise, the old code is still running. The only thing we have to publish is Wized. We don't have to republish in Despia, but we do have to republish in Wized and Webflow. So let's open the application again, and let's start moving my phone randomly here. And oh, let's see. Let's make sure that is published. There you go. Okay. Let's see if the site works. Perfect. Okay. It loads. Wonderful. So let's go back to the application. Let's open that. Beautiful. Okay, so let's start watching the background location. You will see how the location is changing. It's updating all this data, right? And now if I stop the background location, you see it is not updating the data anymore because we're stopping the background location event. We stop watching that, and I'm also clearing the variable. So, you know, we're going back to the initial state of it. So there you go. That's how you set that up. It's pretty simple. And, you know, there are a few things you want to make sure you set up correctly. And there are a few things that, you know, seem obvious, but, you know, sometimes they're a little bit tricky, like actually taking the correct parameter, right? Because we don't have one variable here storing one value. I mean, you could do that, but for the sake of convenience, we have one variable storing many values inside of here. You know, you can also call this a global variable. So when we have such a global variable, it is very important that we can't just target the whole variable saying, hey, give me v.location. No, you have to say, give me v.location.latitude or give me v.location.watchID to get that specific variable that's essentially in the variable, right? So it's a nested variable. So that's just one thing to watch out for. But besides that, that's how you implement this location change. And it will also work when the user is closing the application. So when I close that application here, and it will probably ask me at some point on the mobile device if this application should watch my location in the background, and I will probably have to accept that. I will probably have to wait a little bit because iOS has that signal random. One thing to note is in order for it to actually process the data, the application would need to be essentially closed like this, but it would still need to be open in the background. That's just a limitation of how iOS handles that and Android. But also if I turn this phone off, it will still process that, but it has to be somewhat in the background on standby. So that's just one thing to note. But yeah, this is how you set this functionality up of reading the data. It's pretty simple. There are a few things to watch out for, but we will provide you with the documentation and the correct code inside of it. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate that, and I can't wait to see all the exciting applications that you will be building with background location tracking. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate that, and see you next time. Take care.